Welcome. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. County Administrator issues an update for this January 11, 2022, which happens to be my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Cindy. Yeehaw. Okay. Gary, what's up?
Thank you, Chair Smith. First, we do have a quorum present. Chair Smith and Commissioner Shull are in the hearing room. On Zoom are Commissioners Fisher, Schrader, and Savis. We're going to start with the consent agenda first. So come on down. Community Corrections is first. Approval of a grant agreement with the State of Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, Justice Reinvestment for Community Corrections Pretrial, Short-Term Transition Leave, and Clackamas Substance Abuse Programs. Grant total is $2,367,982.26. Funded through the Criminal Justice Commission. No county general funds are involved. Malcolm McDonald, Director, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Malcolm McDonald, Director of Community Corrections. The application for this grant was before the board in August. We've been awarded the grant. Of that $2 million, there's $244,000 that does go to local victims services organizations. That's been through a process, and it will continue existing programs that are already operational.
Okay. Any objections or questions for the presenter on this item? Hearing none, go ahead.
Great. Number 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Community Corrections and Willamette National Cemetery to provide work crew services. This is a revenue agreement that will provide Clackamas County $101,250 to support the community service program funded by the Willamette National Cemetery. No county general funds are involved.
This is a renewal of an existing agreement with Willamette National Cemetery for us to continue to do work for them, so no changes.
Any objections or questions for the presenter? Seeing none.
All right. Items 3 and 4 are pulled until an upcoming week, Commissioners, so that's all. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Next, disaster management, approval and certification of a resolution designating an agent for FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program grants. There is no fiscal impact. Daniel Neibauer, Interim Director, go ahead.
This allows me to submit the BRIC grant that we're partnering with PGE on, as well as a potential risk property, flood property that we're going to buy out with using FEMA funds as well. This is the FEMA documentation that allows me to submit that.
So you're asking for a documentation that allows you to carry out two operations, is that correct?
Yes, your signature allows me to submit those grants.
That's great. How is that BRIC grant coming along? What is the status?
It's coming along. We're working hard, partnering with PGE.
And when's the deadline on that?
17th, we will submit it to the state, and the state submits it to FEMA on the 28th.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Any other questions or objections for the presenter on this? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of a fiscal year 2021 State Homeland Security Grant Agreement between Clackamas County and the State of Oregon to provide funding for shelter trailer supplies. Total grant award is $12,200, funded through federal Homeland Security dollars. No county general funds are involved.
This is a federal grant through the state, which allows us to buy another trailer, getting our total up to 7 or 8, I believe.
Great. Any other objections or questions? Seeing none.
Item 3, approval of a fiscal year 2021 State Homeland Security Grant Agreement between Clackamas County and the State of Oregon. Total grant award is $64,712 to assist in writing a volunteer and donations plan funded through federal Homeland Security funds. No county general funds are involved.
Again, a federal grant through the state that would allow us to write a volunteer and donations management plan with the use of a contractor so that we can be better prepared to receive volunteers and donations when needed.
Wow. Very good. Any other objections or questions? Seeing none.
Item 4.
Chair Smith, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I was really pleased to see these grants, and I'm just curious, are these grants that we would have applied for anyway, or is the fact that we're looking at 21 different disaster zones and really looking at community engagement was an impetus for us to seek out additional dollars to help support us?
It was both. This plan was due for revision, as well as looking at the after-action report from the wildfires and the ice storm. We identified it as something, so it moved it up on our list to be able to apply for, and the state was generous enough to fulfill that request.
Oh, that's great. I'm really happy to see this. This is such a huge priority for Clackamas County and part of what is really important in our strategic goals and priorities.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Any other comments? Seeing none, go ahead.
Item 4, approval of a fiscal year 2021 state Homeland Security grant agreement between Clackamas County and the state of Oregon to provide funding for emergency generators. Total grant award is $15,000. No county general funds are involved.
Again, a federal grant through the state allowing us to buy generators. The intent will be to be able to power shelters and/or medical facilities, long-term care facilities in the event of a power outage. So looking at dual fuel, still portable generators, not.
Do
not for
fuel
electric.
mean propane, natural gas, and/or
Yeah, it could
regular
be dual,
gas?
tri-fuel, depending on what we can find price-wise to seem
Great.
like to make the best.
Do you have an
benefit.
idea about how many generators this money will buy?
No, because it keeps changing on us every
Right.
time we look at it.
Yeah, I know, because we bought a couple for my residents as well, being in South County.
We're hoping
Thank
to
you.
10 to 12, we're hoping.
Oh, good, good, okay. Any other comments on this? Seeing none?
Item 5, approval of a fiscal year 2021 emergency management performance grant agreement between Clackamas County and the state of Oregon. Grant is a 50% federal share grant that will reimburse Clackamas County disaster management up to 50% of salaries and benefits for Clackamas County disaster management employees. Total grant award is $239,608, with a $239,608 match funded by budgeted county general funds.
This is, again, a federal fund that comes to the state that we get every year. It's been a little bit higher because the state has used CARES and ARPA funds to increase it, and it'll help offset some of our staff and salary costs.
Any questions or objections for the presenter? Hearing none.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Next, under elected officials, district attorney, approval of a fiscal year 2021-2022 local sub-recipient grant agreement between the district attorney's office and the Children's Center of Clackamas County in support of child abuse multidisciplinary intervention programs. The total agreement value is $480,500, funded by the state of Oregon. There are no county general funds involved. Scott from the DA's office can't be here, but I will present this. You'll recall last week, Commissioners, you approved the acceptance of this entire grant from the Oregon Department of Justice Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Intervention Program Services. The total grant award Clackamas County is receiving is $1,040,851.29. We in turn then give some of those funds out to the community. In this case is to the Children's Center of Clackamas County. So this is just kind of closing the loop on now dispersing those grant funds that we have received here at Clackamas County.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Thank you.
Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. 1, approval of a non-federal sub-recipient grant agreement with Northwest Family Services for youth-focused system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services in the amount of $23,000, funded by the state of Oregon. Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved. Ed Johnson, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners Gary Schmidt. I'm Ed Johnson with Health, Housing, Human Services. This amendment adds $23,000 in funding to continue systems diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services, and extends the end date of the eligible grant expenditure by 6 months.
Any questions or objections for the presenter? Hearing none.
Item 2, approval of a non-federal sub-recipient grant agreement with the Father's Heart Street Ministry for warming center services in the amount of $98,136, funded by the state of Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
The Father's Heart Street Ministry will provide overnight warming center services to unhoused individuals in Clackamas County during periods of extreme cold.
Is this for past services or future services?
For future services.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Any other questions? Hearing none.
Item 3, approval of a non-federal sub-recipient grant amendment with Clackamas Women's Services for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services in the amount of $40,000, funded by the state of Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this amendment adds $40,000 in funding to continue system diversion, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, extends the end date of the eligible grant expenditure to six months.
Any objections or questions? Hearing none.
Item 4, approval of a federal sub-recipient grant agreement amendment with the Father's Heart Street Ministry for services for COVID-positive referrals in the amount of $43,500, funded by the state of Oregon, Oregon Health Authority. No general funds are involved.
Yes, with this funding, the Father's Heart Street Ministry will provide services to COVID-positive guest referrals. Referrals are for case management, community resources, and supportive services, including food and transportation for referred individuals.
Okay. Any questions or objections for the presenter?
Yes,
Chair Smith?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Schrader, you go ahead and then I'll ask my question after.
so where are they referred to? And how are they isolated if they have COVID? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, so there's a cross-departmental committee that was formed between Public Health, SSD, Social Services Division, to house COVID-positive individuals in hotels within Clackamas County. So
okay, so
someone,
this-
go ahead. So if an individual presents themselves at one of the warming shelters and they're COVID positive, then we have a contract to transport them to one of the hotels where they will be quarantined in a hotel room for 2 weeks or whatever that, 10 days, whatever the guidance that we have from the state is.
Okay.
And food will be provided as well as even clothes for the individual so that they can be quarantined.
Thank you, Ed. Any further questions? Commissioner Fisher, were you in the queue?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith, and then I see Paul has his hand raised. Question, so I'm assuming that these rapid rehousing and these different services are through the Social Services Division, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so since there is so much overlap and same mission in regards to what the Housing Authority does with the supportive housing services dollars, how are we coordinating this overall program delivery?
So internally, we have.
And you don't have to answer it right now, Ed, because I know that your real gift to Clackamas County is all the numbers and the finances and the contracts and all of that. But if I could get that answer at some point, that would be great.
Oh, well, the answer is we're having internal conversations between the SHS staff, supportive housing staff, as well as with social services, and discussing what does that look like in the future. So there's ongoing conversations. We meet weekly with the SHS staff, and I'm also meeting weekly with the social services staff. So we're definitely having these questions. We want to coordinate services, streamline, ensure that we're using taxpayers' dollars appropriately.
Hey, thank you for that. I didn't expect all that answer, but that is great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Savas, do you have questions?
Mine's not really a question unless Ed is prepared to, unless he has a quick answer. I don't want to burden him this morning, but my concern is that, we certainly know that that the Omicron variant is far more transmissible, and air quality or air handling systems could be actually, if not properly addressed, really a conduit for actually spreading Omicron. So my question is on these hotels, I don't know if they have independent air handling and heating or if they have shared air handling and heating. I just want to, I think that's something we need to be cognizant of. So again, if you're not prepared today, Ed, if you just get back to me, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
I don't have a response. I do not know. I will respond.
Sure. Any other comments for the presenter? Hearing none, thank you, Ed Johnson.
Thanks, Ed. Commissioners on the line, would you please raise your chat hand when you wish to speak, and then Shannon will let Chair Smith know so we can call on you. That would be appreciated. Thank you. Finally, a consent agenda, County Council. Approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County for HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2 consulting services. Contract is utilized on an as-needed basis at an hourly rate of $130 per hour. This is funded through the County General Fund. Kathleen Rastetter from County Council's office. Go ahead.
Morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. This is an amendment to an existing IGA to reflect the increase in the attorney's rate. Her rate went up from $120 to $130 an hour, and also to extend the term so that it's a 2-year contract rather than a 1-year like we had done in the past. This is for consulting services. As Administrator Schmidt said, it's used on an as-needed basis, but this person is an expert in these areas, and so when we have a particularly thorny question on either HIPAA or drug and alcohol laws, which is what 42 CFR Part 2 is, then we consult with this person.
I see.
So this is a continuation of this contract, but to reflect the new rate that this attorney has. And Multnomah County has already signed it, so we'd ask that this be approved and moved to a consent agenda on Thursday.
Commissioners, do we have any comments, questions on this? Seeing none.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Kathleen. That is a consent agenda. Moving on to the regular issues list, rural renewable energy development zone reauthorization. Sarah Ekman and Cindy from Business and Business and Community Services. You discussed this last week on consent agenda. You wanted some more information and background, so we're bringing this back to you before it goes forward. So please, Sarah and Cindy, welcome, and go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. We are back this week. We submitted a packet with the past information that we've been sharing about this rural renewable energy program, development zone program this past year, and are back to have a discussion to see if you do have questions. Cindy was planning to provide just a quick high-level overview to set the stage, and then thought we could open up for any conversation.
Great, go ahead, Cindy.
Certainly. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Administrator Schmidt. Again, Cindy Moore with Business and Community Services. I manage the Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone and the enterprise zones across the county. So as Sarah mentioned, here to answer any questions that you might have. In an update to our last conversation with you, we did work with the assessor's office to provide some general context around what an abatement could look like should a project arrive in our county. And so we did look at an unincorporated area of Clackamas County using the tax rate for that area on a general $10 million investment. Again, this is all estimate, but just to give you some context on what those numbers would be. The abatement on a $10 million investment, this would be for either the 3-year or the 5-year option. In this scenario, we're using the 3-year option. The total abatement would be $142,500. The county portion of that would be around $25,393. So that would be for that first 3 years. That money would then come back on the tax rolls, and the investment would lie as that.
A
in
quick
that
question
state.
before you go ahead. Where does that 25,000 come from? What budget allocation is that? Or has it been budgeted?
That would not have been budgeted because this would be new dollars coming into the county.
You said the county's investment was 25,000.
The portion of the abatement
Would go to Clackamas County.
that would have gone to Clackamas County would have been $25,000 on that $10 million investment. So the county's portion of the abatement, so, I'm sorry, we do have a handout that might be able to explain this a little better too.
This is very, very
So-
complicated.
It is. So a project comes in, it's $10 million that the
Yes.
company is investing, right? So if they were to qualify for the abatement, those first 3 years, the total abatement for all the taxing districts, including the county, would be about $142,000. Of that $142,000 abatement, the county portion would have been about $25,393 per year. And I know that that question kind of came up as to what the county impacts would be on an investment like this with this abatement. And again, after those 3 years, that abatement ceases and those dollars stay on the tax roll.
And the investment does continue to increase over time, as you'll see, and I'll email this to the commissioners online. But the taxable value continues to increase after the end of that, and so ultimately, the investment in the county is quite significant, so. I just want to point
Was this
that out.
handout in the packet you already submitted?
No, this
Okay.
was not.
Okay, so we just pause for a minute so you could email it now
Yeah.
so the commissioners online can see it, and then
Yes.
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Certainly. I see that. I have a quick question. So how many of these situations are currently happening in Clackamas County?
We don't have any, we do not have an active rural renewable energy development zone. We
Okay.
had one for 10 years and it expired at the end of June of last year.
Okay, but who took advantage of that in the 10 years that we had it?
We did not have any applicants in those 10 years.
Okay, interesting.
We had some interested parties, but we did not have a project that moved forward.
Okay. Commissioner Savas, you have a question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment. I think what staff's trying to say is that because these are prospective projects, that the tax dollars we haven't yet received, so therefore we would never see them we wouldn't see them for 3 years, and that would basically be waived, if you will, future revenues. So until they actually come in the tax rolls, would we be budgeting less or more as far as that investment? So it is a little confusing, but I think that's what they're trying to say, if that helps.
That does.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Commissioner Fisher.
So sorry for the delay. Tried to find my mute button. I'm off my laptop this morning. Oh boy. So you may get to this, but I'm really interested to know if part of the criteria of if we ever approve this sort of tax abatement is on the other side of the dial, how many jobs would be generated and what type of revenue. I know it wouldn't necessarily come to us in the form of property taxes, but it would be revenue in taxes coming from income tax because of job generation. Do we do any cost benefit analysis versus property taxes we don't get for the community versus how much economic activity is generated?
That's a great question. While we haven't done that type of analysis to date, that's certainly something we could look at moving forward. The criteria as outlined in the program for the companies is an increase in employment by 10%. So in addition to paying the application fee, which is a percentage of what their investment would be, they are required to increase their employment from their baseline numbers by 10% and hold those numbers throughout the entire abatement period. And those job numbers would be the wages, for those jobs would be then 150% of the county average wage for the 5-year agreement and 150% of the state average wage for the 3-year. So above average wages.
I suppose it would matter what type of business they were doing, depending on the job multiplier. I mean, right?
Yes. It could be management positions, it could be, floor positions, all those, as long as those meet the employment criteria.
Any further questions or comments?
Commissioner Fisher still has her hand raised, again, our second time.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, just to clarify, so it doesn't matter how many employees there are. There could be 2 employees and then they would increase those by 10% and they get the tax abatement?
That is correct. There's no baseline number that needs to be in place.
And is this criteria set up by the state, correct? Or is this federal?
That is correct. That is a state program that we implement locally, should the board approve the designation of the zone.
Okay, and we will review each of these applications as they come before us so we can ask more specific questions.
At a staff level, we review them thoroughly with consult from our assessment and taxation office as well.
But it would not come back before the board?
It would not.
Okay. Unless you tell us you want it to, commissioners.
Okay, well, maybe we could have a little bit of extra criteria. Just in the cost benefit analysis of, does it make sense to offer an abatement based on what we would gain? It's just a policy question.
We're going to let the staff continue with their presentation, and we can address that request at the end, Commissioner Fisher. Go ahead, Cindy.
Sure. If there were any additional questions on how the program is administered or what type of projects could qualify, we're happy to field those types of questions at this time.
I see that there are 4 areas, Canby, Molalla, Estacada, and Sandy. Is that within city limits or zip code?
So it would be for any areas outside of a 30,000 population would be considered rural. So if it happens within a rural community and the zoning is in place, then the project could move forward. The cities do have ultimate control. So if the cities aren't zoned or do not wish to have this type of project and it's not in their zoning ordinance, the project could not move forward.
I see.
Everything has to be in place zoning-wise for a project to move forward at the city level. Or for unincorporated Clackamas County, it would be the same thing. The zoning would need to be in place.
Yeah, it says no resolutions are required by the cities, and that Clackamas County has the final authority to submit the redesignation request.
That is correct, and we did do outreach to the cities and the taxing districts as well, so they were all aware. We did not receive any formal comments to be shared with the board regarding the zone designation.
Mark, your call.
Yes. We are in competition for businesses to attract new businesses to the county.
Yes, sir.
With our neighboring counties. Do our neighboring counties have a rural renewable energy development zone also?
They do not.
Okay. All right, good, thanks.
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Commissioner Savas, go ahead.
Yeah, knowing that it's a 3-year program, and I'm comfortable moving forward today, realizing that whatever these proposals are, we'll have a proposal before us in the future, should that come to be. But in the meantime, it's all hypotheticals. We can only just imagine what those particulars are as far as number of people employed and, whether there's infrastructure needs or impacts, those are all part of the pro forma and feasibility that would probably be before us. So I'm comfortable moving forward.
Commissioner Schrader has her hand raised.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yes, I'm also comfortable moving forward with this. I've seen these kinds of tools work very well in the past, and it will give us an opportunity, should we really want to do some active recruitment, of having new folks come in. I think it's a very valuable tool, so I'm okay with it.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Cindy said that these proposals would not be coming before the board.
So
We have in the past not brought every single application to the board for your review. If you would like to see that change, we can certainly facilitate those types of conversations. I will say, if this helps at all, the Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone functions very similar to the Enterprise Zone. The difference being this is specific for renewable energy projects. The county, through the board, has approved 5 enterprise zones across the county, and we've had them in place for over 20 years. So I just want to put some context to that, too, that this is not necessarily a new a new abatement program. The name is a little different, the focus is a little different, but this is not unprecedented in Clackamas County for our rural communities and for our urban communities.
In the past, has the board reviewed the applications for the enterprise zones?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I likewise am okay moving forward, Commissioner Fisher, on this. I think, we have not had anybody apply for this for 10 years. It's only for renewable energy projects. Those are hugely, hugely technical and expensive. I don't see anybody breaking our doors down. I don't think commissioners have heard anything. So I think at this point, we just let staff do what they can do best, and we go ahead and approve this. Any other comments from commissioners? Gary, what action do we need?
So if you are agreeing to move forward with the zone designation, we would put this on your consent agenda as soon as this Thursday, if you're willing, since the staff report's already. And then I am hearing interest by at least several commissioners to come to at least inform them when there are applications. So I would say, we'll just do that, commissioners. There's no harm in that. So can you add that to your processes?
I think informing us that, a new business is coming in and they have this project and they're going to apply, I think that's really good information to have. Whether we need to go back and set criteria for them, I don't think we're subject matter experts in renewable energy businesses. I think we can just offer a hand up. I mean, you were talking if it's a $10 million investment. First of all, I don't think a $10 million investment, it would be very low. I think any renewable energy is probably in the hundreds of millions, but these people are going to have to be well-heeled before they even come in and do a project like this. Yeah, I have no problem with that, Gary.
Okay.
So what is our action? Do we need a motion on this?
No, I would say just a direction to me to put it on consent agenda, and we'll do that. You do have Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Fisher in the queue to speak.
Yes, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. So a question for you, Cindy, since we haven't had applications while this has existed, is this a good enough of an incentive to incentivize renewable energy, or would it be appropriate for us to advocate with the state legislature for something different?
I think this is one of those tools that keeps us in the running and keeps us visible for companies who are looking to make these types of investments. I think it's on par with the criteria that we have in place right now. Should we choose to add additional layers, that's where we start having a conversation around competitiveness and what that means when we are going up against other communities who may have incentives in place. Right now, our criteria, we have it in place. There's clawbacks should the companies not meet those criteria. So I think we're positioned competitively as we've kind of framed this up for approval.
Okay, and then just in closing, I agree with what Chair Smith said. We should incentivize renewable energy. It is complex. We do not need to micromanage any of that. I am just always looking at the overarching big picture of, are we appropriately incentivizing for what our values are in economic development in our community?
Absolutely, and that's a great comment. And Sarah mentioned in our last conversation with you that we welcome the opportunity to have a more robust conversation about all the incentives that we currently have in place, whether it be the enterprise zone, this rural renewable energy development zone, the strategic investment zone. Those are the three that we currently have in place, and would welcome that conversation to take a deeper dive.
Wow, very good. Commissioner Commissioner Fisher, have you finished?
I have.
Thank you
Sorry
very
that I
much.
didn't unraise my hand.
That's
I'll have to
okay.
figure that out.
I can't see it anyway, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I don't know if, I support the board's willingness to want to look at, proposals that are likely to move forward. I'm not so interested in looking at applications if it's for the opportunity zone, but yet there's not a land use application. I think when someone submits a land use application, they're pretty serious. And that probably might have more, so to speak, meat on the bones as far as what a proposal looks like. But I think something that's worthy, that looks like it might be substantial or has propensity to move forward. Those are the kinds of proposals I would like to look at. Thank you.
Okay, I think you have a head nod to move forward for the consent agenda.
And we can do it as soon as this Thursday, if you could submit the staff report again, please.
Absolutely, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cindy and Sarah. Next is I-205 Toll Project, Regional Transportation Plan, and Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan Amendment Requests. There's a detailed memo in your packet. We have Mike Besner and Jamie Stasny from Transportation and Development to present. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for having us. We are here to give you a quick update on the I-205 tolling project. This is informational only. Originally, JPACT and MPACT were scheduled to have votes in January, and those have been delayed, due in part to actually a request by Clackamas County. We will come back to a future issues session so the board can give direction to your reps on those two committees, which is Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Savas. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to give the update.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, and Administrator Schmidt. It's good to see you all. As you know, ODOT has requested some amendments to the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program as well as the Regional Transportation Plan. That's the MTIP and the RTP, lots of acronyms, as you know. So these amendments would basically create a preliminary engineering phase of the I-205 toll program. That phase would allow them to move forward and complete the NEPA process for the I-205 toll program and do some preliminary work on designing toll infrastructure. The amendments would also link the I-205 capital improvements project to the future tolling revenue. So that's what these do, technically speaking. For these to be approved, they have to go through a whole bunch of committees at Metro. They have to go through MTAC, TPAC, and MPAC for recommendations, and ultimately they have to be voted on by JPACT and Metro Council. It's kind of a bicameral agreement, so both of them have to approve for them to move forward. As Mike said, these votes have been delayed. That came at the request of Commissioner Savas. The reason for the delay was to allow the OTC to consider a recommendation and a request that's been made from many across the region, which is to take some of the federal infrastructure dollars they're receiving and to apply those to Phase 1A of the 205 Capital Improvements Project, which would allow them to decouple, so to speak, the tolling conversation and slow that discussion down to allow the region to develop a comprehensive, cohesive approach to regional congestion pricing and tolling before implementing tolling on any one part of the system. And so that request will be in front of the OTC during their January 20th meeting, along with many other requests for how to spend that money. They'll be having special meetings in February and March, and the ultimate decision will be made on March 30th by them. The decision right now at JPACT and Metro Council has only been delayed until February, so that's where we sit right now. There will be item on the discussion on the JPACT agenda in January, so it's going to be there, it just won't be voted on. So we're coordinating with many elected officials across Clackamas County who would like to testify at the OTC, and staff is supporting them in that. We'll be working on the messaging for that. And that's basically where we're at right now. There's a lot of technical information in the attachments to what we submitted to you with the memo, so you can dive into that. I'm happy to answer questions anytime if they come up. And as Mike said, we're going to be back in front of you again before these votes happen to allow you the space to give direction to your MPAC and JPAC representatives on the votes. And that's pretty much it. I want to keep it brief this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas has.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, want to thank you and thank you staff, Jamie and Mike, and all the staff that helped work on this transportation issue that we're working on regionally with our regional partners. Everything that Jamie said is spot on. A lot of technical moving pieces to this. The narrative, I think that we tried to where we got a lot of regional support on this, it sounds like, is that we are asking really essentially the OTC to look at using some of their monies that they receive from the federal government, IIJA monies, to kickstart this program so nothing's delayed, because we want to see not one section of the region be tolled, but the tolling to start regionally on all anticipated, if that's going to happen. We don't want Clackamas County to be first or to be the guinea pig, so to speak. So that's the simplification of what we're trying to do. We're hoping the OTC will look at using those dollars to jumpstart their program to get the construction aspects moving forward. Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
Nope, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other commissioners?
Commissioner Fisher.
Commissioner Fisher, and then Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I really support the work that Paul's doing to decouple Clackamas County as being the first place to have all of its lanes tolled to fund these projects. It's a no-brainer in my mind, and they should absolutely, the OTC should absolutely take the region's advice on that, but I'm just concerned that it won't. And so I'm wondering if we also should, Senator Kennemer has a bill that's asking for a vote on tolling. I'm wondering if we should amend it to also include this concept. I just don't trust that ODOT and OTC is going to, I think, take the spirit of what the legislature did in 2017. Throwing that out there as a thought, I think it's really important that this not move forward the way that it's being proposed.
That may be difficult with Senator Kennemer's bill because of the more than one topic. Commissioner Fisher, I believe in his tolling bill, he is requiring a vote for the affected areas. And so if we were to substitute this language in, I'm not sure it would be accepted according to legislative protocols, but I'll let our PGA staff weigh in on that. Commissioner Scholl.
No, Commissioner Fisher just asked the same question I was going to ask.
Okay, good, yeah, but we'll have them, hopefully they're listening, and we'll take a look at that.
If I
Yes.
might. I'm happy to share a little bit. We've been coordinating very closely on this. My understanding is there's proposal for an amendment to that, for Kennemer's proposal, to basically say that the vote would only occur if they try and toll one segment instead of the whole region. So there is some amendment working. I understand there's some conversation. I'll let Chris and Trent fill in the blanks, but there is some conversation about trying to marry kind of these two efforts to make sure they're not isolating one area and tolling it first.
Sure, good. We'll continue with our conversations with PGA on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Have you finished your presentation today? Thank you very much for apprising the board of this really important issue. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, commissioners, your 2022 Commissioner Outreach draft plan for how you can be out and about in the community. We have Dylan Blaylock from Public and Government Affairs to present. There was a memo in your packet. Go ahead, Dylan.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair, fellow Commissioners, County Administrator Schmidt. I am Dylan Blaylock with Public and Government Affairs. Great to be in front of you today in person, and we are going to be talking a little bit about the town halls. They were very successful last year. Public engagement was solid, but again, we're coming to you in January to see how you'd like to proceed this year for the first part of my update. We had a lot of good numbers last year, and media coverage was relatively good, but we would like to present an alternative to you if maybe we want to consider going ahead and holding these town halls quarterly rather than every month. If we were to go quarterly, we think we could increase our planning and our outreach to groups and have more time to book guests depending on the topic and get a greater media focus. That being said, there's not a wrong way to go here, of course. We did have good success last year on a monthly basis, but we would propose that we go ahead and maybe think about switching to March, June, September, and October and go ahead and plan these out a little bit more. If we do that, we also would capitalize on the events more post-event. We would want to take a media action every time, either sending out a press release or maybe drafting an op-ed from a commissioner or several commissioners, or maybe doing an interview, and I can get into that in a little bit once we're done with the town hall discussion. But that's really, we just wanted to, take the temperature of how the board feels that the town halls are going, and if you would like to continue on monthly, that's no problem, but we could also try quarterly. And of course, if we go quarterly, we always have the option of if a different topic, an imminent topic, pops up, then we can go ahead and produce an off-month one for that.
So if a topic arises that we think we need to have a town hall to engage our public, we could schedule something.
Oh, yes. During the early days of the pandemic, we could turn, I think we turned one town hall around in 5 days.
5 days, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Commissioners, do we have?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher, then Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Okay, Commissioner Savas?
Sorry.
That's all right. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I agree with the proposal. I don't think we need to have, a town hall every month, just have a town hall every month, like a meeting for a meeting. But I do like the flexibility of it being able to be nimble and be able to put one together. So I'm supportive of the proposal based on that premise.
Thank you, Paul. I am as well. For instance, we had our last town hall on tolling, and the presenters presented one side, and I think I mentioned that maybe we would want to have another town hall with presenters from maybe a different perspective. That is just an idea, Commissioners, and certainly that doesn't have to be the only quarterly one if another issue arises. Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, I'm good with the idea for a quarterly town hall with the option to have a on-call town hall if we have an issue that pops up that's a hot issue.
Yeah, I think I hear approval for that, Dylan.
Very good. I will be back soon in the next few weeks to determine the next scheduled topic that will probably happen in March. We can talk about it then, but of course we can do a town hall whenever the board
Propose the same time, it's the first Wednesday, right?
Yeah, that seems to work, and in the surveys that we put out to the community, they do like the evening town halls during the week, so I would go ahead and propose, unless it's difficult on schedules, 5:30, the first Wednesday of each, well, it's not each quarter, but March, June, September, and October, and December, but we can always, be fluid and move. Okay.
That's fine.
Great.
Okay,
So
next.
for the second part, we would like to start, PGA is looking at going into some different communication ideas that that have not come to fruition, but we'd really like to check out this year. A couple of them are, we're really looking into developing a monthly podcast, and we are also looking into developing a 30-minute or around a 30-minute television program for the government channel. Included in either of those, one thing that we would like to start scheduling commissioners on a rotating monthly basis is an interview on a given topic. We're thinking around 8 to 12 minutes, somewhere in there. We would work with the PAs to schedule that ahead of time. And this might be done over Zoom. It might be done in person, just depends on what's going on. And we would go ahead and showcase the interview in those, whatever sort of programs that we determine are the best course of action for them. We would also use the snippets with commissioners on social media as teases for the larger programs. And I wanted to just see what everybody thought about that.
Any comments on this proposal, Commissioners? Mark, go ahead.
Dylan, that sounds really good. I like that idea. It increases transparency with what's going on. It's a great idea.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Dylan on this topic? I see none.
I'm good to go.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, it sounds like it's a good to go. Thank you for coming up with new ideas.
No problem. Thank you so much. And I'll be back in a few weeks to discuss the March topic.
Great.
And there was a thumbs up from Commissioner Fisher. Shannon, does she want to speak?
Yes, she's raised her
Commissioner
hand.
Fisher has a comment.
Yeah, only because I couldn't lower my hands fast enough. I just wanted to say that this is kind of fun. Commissioner Savas and I on the Zoom putting our thumbs up saying, yeah, but you guys can't see that. So I just wanted to make sure you knew we were all in agreement. In the
Yeah,
Zoom room.
commissioners, on this format, I'm going to assume it's okay unless I hear something to the negative of which you can chime in. So I'll just proceed along those lines that you think what we're doing is fine. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Dylan. All right, next, public contracting education update. Tracy Moreland from County Administration will help me. Back in December, commissioners, you had suggested or asked that staff come up with a way to, one, educate commissioners, but also the public who choose to contract with Clackamas County, our processes and systems of the county, so people aren't surprised. Kind of a procurement 101. Especially because there's a lot of confusion and also some instances recently of some nonprofits that have not spent their money wisely that Clackamas County has provided. Everything has been worked out eventually. But Tracy's agreed to take the lead of this project and wanted to give you an update on where we're at and seek further clarification. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. So I'm working with staff in 3 different departments, Finance and County Council, and also PGA. So Finance and County Council, we're going to develop and design a presentation for you that'll probably be on your schedule in February. And PGA is thinking of creative ways that we can communicate to the public, kind of that basic information. However, we do have a really great web page already with a lot of good information, so we're trying to figure out what that piece is going to look like. But in our presentation to you in February, I think it would be helpful for staff if they had a little bit of feedback, just to know more than just the general basic information. Are there any questions, specific questions that you would like to answer, or information that you would like to receive apart from sort of just the standard information on how to do business with the county, so that you're all you all have the same information. And of course, we'll have questions in real time there during the presentation as well.
Commissioner Savas originally suggested this idea, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Commissioner, and we did listen to, of course, the audio from the last meeting, but do you have any further ideas or clarification you'd like to offer Commissioner Savas? And then Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you everyone, and Tracy for presenting this and doing the work to prepare for today. The purpose, just as a reminder, was to bring a sense of knowledge to each of us and the public as to what the limits are, what the ethics are, and the procedures are about procurement and public contracting. I think I have heard from some nonprofits some apparently misunderstandings of what that is, and perhaps even the ethics around that. So I think that we have to realize that in the state and federal public contracting laws are pretty clear, but I'm not so sure that we have, I know that Tracy referenced the web page, but I'm just kind of wondering if whether it's FAQs or a video about the do's and don'ts. But I just want to make sure everyone understands that we just can't willy-nilly hand out public dollars with having, number one, accountability, obviously, number one, a fair opportunity to bid on that. And as opposed to just assigning to say, yeah, we'll just give you that bid and not give it out competitively. And by the way, when it is competitive, what are the rules for competing and involvement? So I think that was the premise essentially for me asking for this, some work on this. So thank you. Gary, does that get to your point, your question?
Sure does for me. Tracy, you?
Yes, and I think we just want to make sure that we're going to come to the board with a presentation, but also have some extra information for the public in some format, whether it's through the cable crew or the website. Both of those outreach methods, one to the board and one for the public, I think, is
Yeah.
the
Tracy,
company.
thank you for this. I think it's good business that we're doing this. If commissioners have any more concerns or additions, please contact Tracy at any time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy.
And Commissioner
Thank you.
Fisher has her hand raised.
Oh, Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chair Smith. So I'm just curious what we currently do as far as educating our nonprofits as to what the procurement rules are.
It's a good question.
Elizabeth or Stephen, put you on the spot. Can you answer that question? What do we currently do for people who bid for, to us or seek our dollars?
Are you wondering, when you ask that, is like, do we have an education platform that they need to partake in, or are they given a packet of guidelines, maybe? Is that what you mean, Commissioner Fisher?
Well, I just don't know. I don't know what we currently do. I used to, many years ago, like 25 years ago, gosh, I'm getting so old, but I worked for Multnomah County and I was in charge of the procurement process for different subject areas in human services. And so we just automatically communicated with, that was all just part of the process. And so I'm not wanting us to reinvent the wheel. I don't know what we currently do. I can tell you that everything that went into the supportive housing, our local implementation plan took place. There was a group of people from the community that informed that plan, and it was a pretty long, extensive process of community outreach, huge planning process that then resulted in the services that were put into the procurement process that went out to the community. But I don't know what Clackamas County does in other processes. Just the one that I've been involved in. And sometimes I assume we do things like I was used to when I was in charge of it. And I get, oh, we don't do that? Oh, okay, that's different. So it might be good for the commission to be educated on what our typical process is when it comes to planning.
Well, maybe that would be something that can be presented at the time. This is what we're doing. This is what we propose for an enhanced education platform, something like that I would recommend. And we're not prepared to answer that today, Commissioner Fisher, but I do think it's a good question.
And we do have a process, of course, but we can get the full process outlined for you as part of this education effort. Great question. Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Yeah, one other thing I want to add to this, I guess I'll use the analogy that if a brand new small business goes to the bank and applies for a loan, for example, and they're not really prepared, and they don't know what the ropes are and what they need to put forward, they may or may not be successful in that, and they could feel that they're disenfranchised or not. But we are a public body, and I think that because we're a public body, these are public dollars that are being distributed out there by the awardees. It's incumbent upon us to have those rules. I think some education. Those of you who remember some of the comments on our town halls, and whether it's in private conversations or in meetings, community meetings, there's a lot of people that have jumped into this opportunity for the supportive housing services dollars, new money. A lot of people that are jumping into it to forming nonprofits and not fully understanding, and yet being kind of critical at times. And I don't mean, well, maybe they are or maybe they're not, but clearly it's demonstrated to me that revealed to us, frankly, that they don't understand what the laws are. And I thought it would be good public policy in being transparent to educate folks that you just can't apply and not be prepared. I think it's incumbent upon a small business or anyone to be ready, know what the rules are, but again, if we expect people to know that, I think at some point, I think we have some responsibility to make sure we provide that information as well. So it's mutual, so everyone's successful, essentially.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any more comments, Gary?
No more comments. I think we have clear direction. We'll move
Very
forward and
clear.
keep you posted and appraised as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, very much. Next, Commissioners, my update for you on the Administrators Housing Task Force and steps moving forward. You had asked me to consider this back in the December, your last business meeting of the year. So just a real quick history, the Administrators Housing Task Force was created by my predecessor, County Administrator Don Krupp, in particular to help with the implementation of the county's Veterans Village, because multiple departments were involved in making that effort a success, and we found that there was no structure to make sure we were all working interdependently. That's the wrong word. Collaboratively. So Don formed the Administrators Housing Task Force. At the time, Commissioners Savas and Commissioner Schrader joined to kind of help give guidance and to help staff along the process. And that was a very successful effort. When the Veterans Village project was completed, the Administrators Housing Task Force continued to talk about general housing issues, and in my opinion, it was a failure at that point, because without a specific project, we talked things, in my opinion, we talked about things in circles and did absolutely very little. More recently, the task force was then disbanded. It was reformed later last fall at the recommendation of Commissioner Savas to focus on the budget for the Supportive Housing Services Program. I felt that was a success because, again, we had a very specific project that we focused on. Yet the challenge is that with only 2 commissioners present, other commissioners felt they weren't involved with the discussions and the deliberations. Even though we brought it back to you for the full board, there were still things happening behind the scenes that simply were not able to keep all commissioners involved at all times. So with your input and guidance, here is what I'd like to do moving forward. That is, reform the Administrators Housing Task Force, but with no commissioner participation. Staff only, and it would be the departments of H3, Health, Housing, Human Services, Transportation and Development, Public and Government Affairs, County Council, and County Administration. Those departments only, directors only, to implement the direction of the board, to have a strategy type team where we would report back to you frequently on what we're working on, and to keep it focused on very specific projects. My challenge with having commissioners participate is, who would it be? Because all 5 of you are interested in housing and homelessness, and more recently, Project Turnkey, the congregate shelters. You're all interested in that. So rather than having just 2 of you participate in the task force, I'd rather come to you fully at an issue session to get your guidance, to get your feedback, and also to report back to you what the task force is working on. The first project this task force will work on is Project Turnkey, which you've already given direction to staff to come up with a proposal of what that would look like should the legislature approve funding for that. So that's our first assignment. Second assignment is to work on the policy session upcoming on congregate shelters, hotels, motels, and a future of transitional housing, similar to the Veterans Village model. We are going to come before you on January 25th for that policy session, so sooner than was originally scheduled. So that is my plan moving forward. I, of course, am always welcome your feedback and input, but I think that's the best model, where your involvement is here at issues, to give direction to staff and to get frequent updates, and then let staff work on the task force itself to help move things forward and implement your direction. That is my update. I'm happy to answer your questions, hear your feedback, and so far Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Savas have their hands raised.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
I'll let Commissioner Fisher go first. She got her hand up first.
Commissioner Fisher.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Savas and Chair Smith. So, Gary, I like your idea. I do think that all 5 of us are very engaged on this, and I do think that the task is great enough that staff really need to dive deep and effectively, and I do appreciate the guidance that this board has given and how aligned we are in what we are concerned about. The other issue that I really want to bring to the task force attention is to educate the board, and I'm not sure the best way to do that, so we need the advice of staff to advise us. But I'm hearing from so many people that the landscape has changed since the homeless services measure was devised and put forward, and there are more significant challenges out there. And I'm not sure if that's Mary Rumbaugh talking about behavioral health and substance use. Bill Stewart with our district attorney's office, I had a conversation with him that really was enlightening on where some of the challenges are. There's more out there. I don't know what the answers are, but we know that this board is concerned about facilities for getting clean and what that looks like. I submitted across to everyone, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, a very in-depth article from The Atlantic, actually highlights some of the issues that are happening in our region. But we need to get better educated because as policymakers, this is the changing landscape and we need to be ready for it and be on top of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Gary, I'm not sure I have the same recollection of how things went. Maybe I misunderstood what you said, but the first thing I want to clarify is in the Housing Task Force, I don't think we ever deliberated on anything. I think deliberation has a key meaning, and any deliberation was actually amongst the board. I found, and I think that a number of us who sat at that table, those tables at the time, that absent the administrator's task force, that shelter never would have came to fruition, never would have happened. And it struggled even as it was with the task force. I felt that Commissioner Schrader and I helped bridge gaps. And also our other value add was actually how to reach out to the public. We went, so to speak, door to door to all the local neighboring businesses of the shelter and then some, and did a lot of organizational community meetings and everything to make that happen. So, if that's a need, again, great. If there's hiccups, great. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Our involvement doesn't matter if the project or the shelters or the whole initiative is moving forward as per the board direction. I think that's where it was stalled off. It shouldn't have taken as long as it did. And again, hats off to everyone who made their contribution, especially at the staff level. And I heard directly many times from staff saying, without the commissioner's involvement at that point in time or certain points in time, it never would have happened. I was able to bring in private sector assistance, that would have cost us a substantial amount of money and delays had it not been, for example, moving those structures from the Oregon City site to the Clackamas site. The other thing I wanted to just give you a briefing on, yesterday I happened to speak to an official at Multnomah County. I'm not going to mention that person's name. I don't want to get them in trouble. But it was a good conversation. I don't think there's anything bad out of it, other than to say that when they acquire or consider acquisition of a property for sheltering or for housing or for anything, they have quite a more rigorous process than we do. I want to make sure that we actually bring our game up in that regard. You've heard me say, I don't want to hearken on it again, but we have had every property that we have acquired with the initiative or the goal of moving in shortly with some minor modifications or improvements has been a disaster. Every one of them has blown up, had to have substantial work. We didn't meet the initial initiative or the cost, and the cost just spiraled out of control. It is about assessment and skill sets and so forth. And I think after that long conversation with an official who actually does that there in Multnomah County, they have a far better track record than we do. Granted, they have openly admitted that they have bought a couple problem properties, that sprung up on them afterwards. But for the most part, their success rate is far better than what ours is. And that's my concern about turnkey going forward, that we actually take and really use, this is not their term yesterday, but what I got out of it was a three-step or three different separate processes to evaluate a property prior to acquisition, but in consideration of acquisition. So it's key that we don't buy a burden and not accomplish our mission with limited dollars and limited time to help people. That's all.
Thank you, commissioners, for those comments. Any other comments for Gary as he moves forward on this? Hearing none. Gary?
Okay, so that's how I'm going to form the task force, and I will keep you posted and seek your input and direction at at issues as frequently as possible and necessary, and of course, your questions will always be answered that you may have. Thank you. Next, your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, January 13th, 2022. It is an evening business meeting, 6 o'clock p.m. COVID-19 updates. You have a public hearing, a continuation of the discussion on forming a special district for Hoodland Park District, as well as a long consent agenda. Everything from today's review will be put on this Thursday's business meeting for your consent agenda. And that is it. Although I do expect your public hearing on Hoodland Park will probably be quite lengthy. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know prior to Thursday. Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Go ahead.
Gary, I want to go back to the task force thing. I thought you were gonna close this out. Well, what I mean by close it out is that if indeed your recommendation is to do this without any commissioners, I want to know what it is. What is it that you're going to do? I mean, I don't think we've given clear direction, and I'm not sure you received any. So what is it you feel this group is to be charged with?
You did give direction, Commissioner, and I said that at the start of my presentation. The first is the project turnkey to prepare, if there's state legislative funding, what sites we could potentially acquire. It's your decision to make, of course, but staff's been working on that right now. Second is to prepare for the January 25th policy session that commissioners, you've all been asking for quite a while on congregate shelters, hotel-motel acquisition, and the future of transitional housing in Clackamas County. So those are the first two immediate assignments the committee is working on based on prior board direction.
Okay, well, thank you for restating that, and I want to, maybe we ought to put a name on it, and I've really been putting a lot of thought in this. When we completed the Veterans Village, and after we, this pilot project became more of a permanent project, and we gathered on its success and everything else. Prior to that, we had the board in our retreats and in our work sessions had the discussion of that there would be shelter number 2. We didn't say shelter number 2. I'm putting this name on it today. Shelter number 2 and shelter number 3. That there would be, a follow-up that we would broach it, and if we were successful, move forward with that. So I think that's what I would like to have more clarity on. And if that's what part of the January work session is on, great. But I want to make sure that when I raised this issue in September, a turnkey project was not on our radar. That was something that's relatively new. So I don't want to lose sight or priority that's not lost. And the reason I say that is number 2 is that when we talk about the future SHS implementation plan, there are some things that are missing in that plan. And I think that we would probably write it differently today with everything we know. So I want to make sure that we're ready for that conversation, because shelters is part of implementation plans in the other counties. It's not with ours. So I want to make sure that we have a greater role in structuring that implementation plan, the SHS LIP. In advance, that we've got a plan that we can actually do, because I don't want to have us say, okay, we're going to do this and then not deliver on actually the shelter. Let's just say that we add a shelter to the LIP and we don't deliver it in a year's time. I don't want to set ourselves up for failure. I want to make sure we're setting ourselves up for success, and that's why I'm a little bit distraught that my ask in September, October is just taken this long, and now it's January. So that's a concern, I think, of expediency that I think otherwise, had that been in the hands of the task force, we would have a lot more traction by now. Thank you.
Gary, you want to comment?
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Yes, the discussion on Shelter 2, Shelter 3 will be part of this January 25th policy session and ongoing from that. And yes, you're right, Commissioner, this should have all been a conversation with you all back in October. And it didn't happen, and I'm sorry. The pandemic has more of an impact than you may ever know on staff. Commissioner Schrader and then Commissioner Fisher have their
I'll just make a comment. I believe it was Commissioner Fisher who put the addition of turnkey on this particular update that you're doing. And I think any commissioner can add to the housing update. I don't think it's just particularly a certain narrow focus, is my understanding. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Commissioner Schrader, you're muted.
I just became vice chair of County Solutions, and we're going to be working on this issue and tracking the legislation for turnkey, and also working on legislation we have pulled together in order to get more technical assistance to counties that needed it. So that is moving ahead. I think the turnkey piece is important because I think that our issue the first time was that we really didn't identify properties. We need to really identify properties way ahead of time to get that public process going before we kind of move ahead with something and surprise people. So I am interested in making sure that there's more funding out there. There's been a conversation about making it even more flexible, but I would like to ask the Administrators Housing Task Force to really start looking at early acquisition of properties and maybe give us a list of some kind so we can begin any groundwork. So people will always be, they'll always be anxious about it. That's not the issue, but with an appropriate outreach model, I think that we can actually be pretty successful with that. My only other question, Gary, is then how are we going to get updates about the dollars coming in? Is that going to be included with this for the service delivery program? For, from Here Together and where we are with that and what we're going to be spending on it? Is that still going to be a function of the Administrators Task Force?
No, Commissioner, unless you direct us to do that. So again, the task force, all it's doing is implementing board direction. We are not doing anything other than that. So whatever you direct us to do, that's what the task force is doing. And we'll report back to you as frequently, weekly if necessary, and again, seeking your input and direction in public at issues as we have. Thank you.
I was just wondering, though, are we going to continue to track the amount of money that's coming in and then ramp up?
Yeah, staff's been doing that, and we'll make sure that we're updating the board at issues on that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Was Commissioner Fisher in?
Yeah,
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher, go ahead.
Thank you. It is always amazing to me how aligned we all are when it comes to what we need to do to care for our community. And I'm sure Chair Smith is already thinking about this, so it probably doesn't need to be said, but message probably expressed by all of us about having frequent systematic updates for the board, I think is what we're hearing. And then I just want Commissioner Savas to hear that part of my initial comments about what we need to be updated on is right in alignment with what you are mentioning about the continuum of shelter. I do believe that the shelter is part of our local implementation plan, and making sure that this board gets information effectively to say what is going to work in our community from the experts will be really important, because I do think that we must, of course, take our recommendations from our staff, but we need to be educated on the issues as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for your comments, commissioners, on this. I think Gary has really enough information to go ahead on this task force. Is that right, Gary?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I see no other hands raised.
All right, next, advisory boards and commission appointments. Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. We have two today. The first is the Clackamas Workforce Partnership. It currently has 4 openings on their commission due to term expirations. 25 members are allowed with 3-year terms. The recommendations today are Brooke Brownlee for her 2nd term and John Irvine for the 1st term. They are working on reopening this application to fill the other 2 remaining spots.
Great.
The second is the Milwaukee Center Community Advisory Board, staffed by the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, Milwaukee Center. They currently have 1 opening on their commission due to a term expiration. 12 members are allowed with 3-year terms. The recommendation is Jessica Wright for her 1st term. That is all I have today.
Thank you, Shannon. Any comments on this? Commissioner Scholl, I entertain a motion.
Yes, I move to approve the nominations for both boards.
Second?
Commissioner Scholl has moved to approve the nominations to these two commissions and boards, and Commissioner Savas has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Shannon, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0, plus a bark. Okay. Thank you, Martha. Gary, what's next?
Finally is Commissioner Communications.
Commissioner Communication, wow. Who wants to go first? Commissioner Scholl wants to go first.
Yes. Good morning. Just before we went on break on 17 December, I attended the Association of Oregon and California Land Grant Counties Association meeting.
Wow.
In Roseburg. And it was very interesting. I have a financial statement of the association here to share with the other commissioners. The director and staff of the Bureau of Land Management, Oregon and Washington, was also at the meeting, and they briefed us on the status of harvest of these lands that BLM manages. And in particular, they talked about the progress of harvest of those forest lands that were burned in the 2020 fire. And unfortunately, on these federal lands, because of the Endangered Species Act, there's a lot of restrictions on how much of this material that can be harvested. And they're estimating now that about only 20% of those trees burned are actually going to be harvested, which is, to me, rather heartbreaking. And also, we're closing in on the 24-month period here this summer when those trees will no longer have a marketable value anymore. So that was very interesting. Compare that to privately held land that was burned in 2020 that's essentially all harvested and 75% replanted. So we are being affected by very restrictive federal laws in that Endangered Species Act. I don't know how much pressure we can put on the state to change it at this time, but that's where that is. On a good note, you might already know that last July, the Secure Rural Schools Act was funded again for 3 more years. So we'll be getting a payment in March of this year, March of 2023, and March of 2024. After that, it looks like that could be the end of that funding. Remember, that was provided by Congress as a fix to those counties whose incomes were almost depleted because of the Endangered Species Act and the spotted owl. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. You talk about the Secure Rural Schools Fund. We had a briefing on that last week.
Okay.
With Summit Strategies, our DC lobby group, and they're going to be changing the funding formula on SRS. It may not be called SRS anymore, and we maybe have a decision of which allocation to take, and I can't remember what the name of that was, Mark. But thank you for bringing that forward. That is very important.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And we'll get a payment again, I think, in tune of $1 million plus. Our dues are at $31,000. We have 5.5% of all these lands of the 16 counties, so that's where that's at.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith, and Happy New Year again. Boy, what a way to start the new year, huh? I know that most of you know because I shared with you that my boosted, vaccinated spouse has COVID, and he came down with symptoms Thursday night. So boosted Omicron breakthrough is not fun at all, very debilitating. And I am very concerned about how this is going to be affecting our workforce, not because my husband is sick, but just how sick people get with what is considered mild illness. It feels really, really awful, and it's very debilitating. So because I'm living with this in my home, and it's he's isolated, but if ever he comes out, I chase him around with the Lysol spray, and I have all my masks everywhere. And I feel fine. I don't have any symptoms. So at least, they say 75% of boosted is effective against warding off the virus. I'm part of the 75%. He's part of the 25%. It's serious. And so I am going to be working remotely as much as possible. I do not want to get what he has. I cannot afford being laid up the way that he is for days and days and days. It's very, very bad. I'm concerned about our workforce. I think that we should all be operating remotely for now. This Omicron, as I understand it, is going to peak very quickly, and then it's going to subside just as quickly. I really want to encourage Chair Smith and the rest of us to do all we can to at least, we may all end up getting this, but at least to stop it all happening at once as much as possible. So that's my plea, so that our staff can work remotely, so that I can see all of the faces of all of my commissioners on our Zoom call. I enjoy seeing Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Savas, but I don't see the rest of you. I'd really like to see your faces. That is a huge request of mine moving forward. And then just on an aside on some other business, I know that most of us are now on the board of AOC, which means that we are part of the legislative committee. I was not able to participate in the board meeting yesterday, but I just want to alert folks to a bill that Senator Steiner Hayward has spearheaded in collaboration with the committee of AOC, the Health and Human Services Committee, that will be taking a deep after-action dive into COVID to really look at overall what worked, what didn't work, and what we need to do better. And I know here at the local level, we're constantly doing that, but I think that's good news that the state will also be looking at that, because there are a lot of things that we have learned and continue to learn through this which seems to be never ending, whatever it is, endemic now. Is that what we're going to be doing? It's almost like fire season. It's like, okay, don't light fires during these few weeks of it being extremely dry. Well, it's almost like we'll have to be limiting our activities and change our behavior for certain periods when the community spread is super high. I'm not sure what the future holds, but we're going to need to adapt and learn to live with this virus, because it's not going anywhere, in my opinion. I don't know that officially.
Have you finished, Commissioner Fisher?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And just so you know, and all the commissioners know, and everybody who's listening know, we do have plans in place if the workforce becomes hugely debilitated. People who are working remotely, for those who choose to work remotely. There are people who are quite healthy and resilient. We'll see how that continues to be. There are a lot of people who have had symptoms and have tested negative for COVID. It is cold and flu season. Please keep that in mind. And I'm not trying to mitigate any of the spread of the Omicron whatsoever. But in order to be responsive to the constituents who still demand government services, regardless of whether we're shut down or not, we will continue to provide services in the best way we can. We are, three commissioners are enjoying our hybrid versions of these meetings. They will continue to be in hybrid. As you know, executive sessions have been, we put out a directive yesterday for the next month. Executive sessions will be Zoom only. And so we are making accommodations with Gary and staff. He is monitoring it really several times a day going forward. And we'll just work our way through this day by day as the situation presents itself to us. I am not going to go into a panic, seriously, with Clackamas County government because we have increased cases. I understand increased cases. But what does that mean? Does it mean you test positive yet you're asymptomatic and you feel fine? Yes, this virus does spread. But as I've been observing the data that's coming in, the hospitalization rate today is still not what it was with Delta. That doesn't mean it won't change next week. But I think please understand, Commissioners, the leadership here at Clackamas County with your input is very fluid, is very mindful, and very flexible in how we manage this Omicron variant going forward. Thank you. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Thank you. You can see I'm enjoying being home a little bit because I've been getting doggy kisses.
Good for you.
Okay. They jump on my lap. They try and disturb my train of thought. But
and they also vote, I hear.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
I'll get the puppy vote. In any case, I wanted to let you know that I just started the Neco Leadership Academy, and it's going to be pretty rigorous. And I want to thank Tracy Moreland, my policy person who works with me more directly and helping me organize that, make sure I'm getting to the meetings. It's a 12-week course. It was developed by General Colin Powell and business leaders across the country on how to be a high-performance leader. And I'm thrilled about it because I think there's always room to improve, and I have to come up with my own improvement plan as a leader about what my goals are as part of this whole scenario. So I'm really looking forward to working on that. And then also I'm starting to work more closely again with County Solutions at the at AOC at this point. And as I said, I mentioned a few minutes earlier, housing is going to be a part of that. They've talked about Project Turnkey. They did mention Alyssa Kenny Geyer's bill, but there is another bill, I think it's by Representative Krupp. I'm not sure, I'll have to check on that, where again, they're trying to get more flexibility for turnkey to see if we can get those dollars out. And we will probably continue to pursue AOC's priority, which is to get more flexible technical funds, particularly for some of our rural counties that oftentimes can't even apply for OHCS, Oregon Housing and Community Services dollars, because they don't have the staff capacity to do so. And other than that, I'm continuing to work with Clackamas Workforce Partnership. Great interest in childcare accessibility, because that has been a real barrier for people to get back to work. And the workforce situation has been fascinating because we're seeing people, because of Omicron, staying home. So there's actually been a shortage of folks in the workforce at this point, all the way from teachers to bus drivers to restaurant workers. So it's an interesting time to be involved in that. So I'll continue to do that. Other than that, my new granddaughter's doing great. She's gaining weight. She's beautiful. And I'm just enjoying having 4 grandchildren now. So Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Martha. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a ailing relative who I've been wanting to see and visit for a long time now. And Omicron, I think the threat of Omicron has made it kind of sketchy. So I want to visit her sometime soon. So I want to make sure I'm not passing anything inadvertently or unbeknownst to me to anyone else. So I'm taking every precaution I can. And I think we all should be as responsible as possible, where we can, as reasonably as we can, to avoid any close contact or interactions that we just don't have to take that risk where we can. That said, my update for today, Commissioner Schrader and I, before the Christmas break, met with the Home Builders Foundation folks. I want to give them a big shout out. I reluctantly said shelter 2 and shelter 3, but and the reason I say reluctantly is that there were 3 shelters, the home builders, 4 shelters the home builders have been part of and contributed towards in a big way. And as an example of what the private sector can do. And I think that our program, whatever that looks like in January from our staff, has some elements of how we can help private sector folks stand some of these things up. We don't need to do it ourselves, but I think having some guidelines, some tenets, some guiding principles are really important, because I think we need to learn from our successes. So I want to thank the home builders for the projects they've done, including adding some very nice units at the Veterans Village. Veterans Village added several new units that are more modern and more comfy and look a lot nicer. Also, they helped with the latest project outside of Oregon City for victims of human trafficking. I won't go into all of them because I don't want to disclose where all those are for privacy reasons, but they've done an outstanding job. But they're willing to do another one. They came to us in December, want to do another one. So I think that we shared those ideas about some of the tenets or guiding principles, and they haven't asked, and I'm happy to, and Martha can as well, share with each of you how we can help that along. And we've been able to help them in the past in a big way, in the sense of whether it's permit fees or SDCs in certain cases, not all cases, just certain cases, but wherever we can help, because I don't, government doesn't have to do it all, and sometimes the private sector does it better. In certain circumstances, so not always. But with that, I just want to let you know that aside from all the transportation stuff I'm doing and all those meetings, and that I'm still got quite a bit going on the housing side as well. I do want to give a big shout out also to our transportation staff for all the work that they're doing. I kind of mentioned it earlier. It's really ramped up in a big way. We have just got I think a lot of regional momentum, and we're working together better than I think that we ever have in my recent memory at all, completely. And I think that we've got to take advantage of that as we navigate all the crises that we're dealing with. And I think the biggest one right now is this, from a transportation standpoint, is this I-205 project, whether it's the construction and or it's the tolling and how they interact. But that's my update. Just want to let you know I'm hard at it and will continue to, and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Paul. As your chair, please, commissioners and the public, we are monitoring the Omicron COVID situation really constantly. And it does have a good deal of my attention, along with all the other meetings that I'm in that requires the chair's attendance. And so the management of this is active. Today I have an audit committee meeting, which it's going to be very interesting. We get the results of an audit that was completed on our elections department. Very good results on that. That will be brought forward in a policy session as a briefing, since all audits are going to be made public for transparency, to let the public know what we're doing and the improvements that we will be making in probably all departments, and including county administration. Commissioners, you may not know, but on the audit schedule, county administration, meaning commissioners too, we will be subject to an audit, but it's very, very directed. It has to do with Title II and Title VI, and that's the expenditure of federal dollars that come in to make sure we are abiding by the federal rules. So when we talk about ARPA dollars and abiding by the federal rules, it's very important that we adhere to those. Later today at 5 on Zoom meeting, we're going to have a meeting with the Fair Board regarding the construction and moving forward of the livestock barn. Commissioners Scholl, I believe, will be present. Myself, I was asked to come in and lead a discussion group with Senator Kennemer and Representative Drazen and the Fair Board folks to develop a scope of work for the livestock barn moving forward, exactly how much it will cost and potential other funding opportunities that may be coming our way on this. So the report needs to be done quite fast on that by, I think, the second week in February, first week in February, so that we can move forward on other funding opportunities for the completion of that barn. I am very dedicated to making sure that happens, that we do not have a stranded project because we don't have enough funds available. And the Fair Board will be working in concert with the Fair Board. They have asked in the past that we provide a project manager to do that through our facilities, and we're going to shore up those agreements and move forward to make sure we have success on this project. So I will report back to you to let you know how that goes today. And I see no other comments or nobody else is in the queue. Gary, do you have anything?
I don't, Chair. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for your participation, and today's meeting is adjourned.